I greet you again. Oh, it's good to see you. Regards to the powers that be. I have a two-part engagement. One on behalf of Professor Shoyinka, and some remarks of recall, memory lane remarks about why today is important in Nigeria. Professor Shoyinka clearly wants us to remember that central to democracy is respect for the will of the people. On the 12th of June, the Nigerian people spoke loud and clear in 1993. But a group of people thought that their will was greater than the will of the people. And because of that mindset, our country was locked in a long battle, but it was a battle of liberation. The commitment of the man who freely got the mandate of the people because the people wanted change kept the fuel in the many people who occupied Nigeria, even before the word occupy was made available for struggles of this nature. That struggle brought out citizenship in the Nigerian people. All Nigerians became involved. We were privileged to have movements like the Concerned Professionals. The Concerned Professionals were people who ordinarily did not think about politics. They were business executives, they were professionals. But when the will of the people was rubbished, citizenship arose in them, and they decided to join even on the streets. There were people who paid a very dear price. But what was not lost was that the will of the people was sovereign, was supreme. And that struggle eventually led to the end of military rule in 1998-99. But the big question that continues to haunt us is that the people have begun to feel weary about this their democracy, or them all crazy, as Fela called it. And yet, those who have acquired power are not sensitive enough to realize that the people have left them. There is a program, initiative, tying several African countries together. This project, started by some American university dons, called the Afro-Barometer, which measures the support of democracy in societies. And they worked very hard in Africa. Since 1998, they have been measuring continually how people everywhere in Africa feel about their democracy. In 1998, when they started, the feeling about democracy in Nigeria was like the bottle was going, everybody was excited about this coming democracy, this 1999 election. Latest measure suggests that the Nigerian people don't care anymore about that democracy. The democracy has made itself unattractive to the people. And the hard measures in there have a collective duty to rebuild democracy. Almost in the way that Chief MQ Abiola's candidacy made us forget all those funny things we like to pretend that we care about. Ethnicity, religion, this, that. Everybody rallied around one candidate, no matter what language they spoke, no matter what religion they professed, and all of that. Our democracy needs to return to the excitement of 1993. And our hope, therefore, is that today provides the opportunity to begin to rally the people. And so on behalf of Professor Olishoyinka, I'd like to challenge us to remember that we all have a duty as citizens to make this democracy work for the Nigerian people. Right now, it is not working for them because, if I just give you a few statistics, Michael Zeko may try to give a number of them, but just one or two flavors that I think we somehow need to begin to get sensitive to. Next year, everything we earn as a country will not be enough to service our debt. The entire income Nigeria will have next year will not be able to service our debt. The thing that will facilitate new revenues, that will make it possible, the environment, the condition, is not improving, it's getting worse. So that investors are staying away. 28 May, 2 years ago, the Forbes magazine published an article, Nigeria, Africa's money losing machine. In effect, it was suggesting that if you invest in Nigeria, you are foolish. And what is the big risk of doing business in Nigeria? Regulatory risk, government. We live in a country, and Chibozekome gave that statistic in some measure about poverty. We have now been dubbed the poverty capital of the world. That means that we have the biggest concentration of absolutely poor people on the planet Earth. And the absolute poor in Nigeria actually exceed the total number of absolute poor in the most populous countries in the world, India and China. Nigeria has more poor people. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation study actually suggests that in the next 10 years, 40% of the most miserable people on the planet Earth will come from Nigeria and Congo DRC. And these are two extremely endowed countries in terms of natural resources. The only problem is incompetence and greedy leadership. That's the reason we are where we are. And democracy was to provide an opportunity to be able to replace such people. But that has not happened because we don't have a democracy in Nigeria. Almost all our elections in the last 50 years have been fraudulent. Almost all, quote me. How can we move forward if we don't have a real democracy where your vote counts? But the Nigerian people can seize the process and make their votes count. Now, we can. That's what took us to the streets. The same people, very sadly, who killed Madam Kudirat Abiola were supposed to kill me. Yes. I mean, the court records are there. They tried twice and failed. But God's will always prevails. And so whatever it takes for us to return this country to democracy from this pseudo-democracy of now must be done. That is why every person in Nigeria must register. And like happened in Kano, when Shekarao challenged Kwankwaso years ago, the youth manned the process. Thank God we now have electronic transmission, at least to contribute to the process, so that we can have a real democracy. And people don't vote, not because they don't want to vote, but because of 2-3 things. One, the politicians use violence to make it election day, a day when these people are afraid to come out. 2, they so doctor the process that people don't think anything will come out of it. But let the people know that they can make something come out. Let me take a personal part away from this. You know, Chibabiola Chozogome had quoted when he went to see Chibaneni after the election. I was talking about why he left the country. I had the privilege of that same conversation with Chibabiola. I had traveled out of the country to go to a meeting in Belgrade, which was having a civil war. At the time, I had to fly into Budapest and a 10-hour car drive into Belgrade. And when I came out, I caught a flight to Frankfurt. It was in Frankfurt I heard Chibabiola had left Nigeria. I called his home in London. He was not home. I left messages. I called. At about 2 a.m., my hotel phone in Frankfurt rang. It was Chibabiola. And I said to him, Chief, I was rushing back to say we should start a thank you tour of Nigeria. We should just start a thank you tour and start going around Nigeria. Then he gave me a version of what he just said. I'll tell you the truth. I'll confess in public. During that phone call, I started crying. I just broke down and began to cry. And then we returned to Nigeria. The sacrifices that have been made are too much for us to lose this democracy. To allow it to continue to go the way it is going. We have to build a process. And that's the struggle that we have been engaged in for a few years now. I mean, people say third force, all those, what they know is that I don't like that using third force. I don't like it at all, because some people don't understand things that you are the third. You are not third. First of all, I believe that PDP and APC are one party. Yeah. That's one party. So it was the alternative. Okay? And for us to build a real democracy, we need an alternative. And so we began with meetings. One of the things that people fear after an election is these small parties, they don't have structure. That's part of the nonsense Nigerian politicians have invested in, structure. What is structure? They don't have structure means you won't have people at the 120-something thousand polling stations. So if you don't have people there, they can change the result. That's what they call structure. And so we began to argue that to be able to create people who will police democracy, we needed to bring social movements outside of political parties into the process. And we began a process of trying to find those social movements that will come together under a big tent to use to ensure that the democratic process actually does prevail in Nigeria. And at the point, we agreed that one very important movement that can make a difference that's everywhere in the country is the labor movement. Not the Labour Party, the labor movement. NLC, GUC, they have state political commissions in all the 36 states of the Federation. I had the privilege, and Wale was present there, to address all of these a few months ago. The NUT alone, NUT teachers, there is no community in this country where there isn't a teacher. And in most rural communities, they are the most influential people. And if all of these could commit to this cause, there is no structure that can compare to it. Combined PDP, APC, they don't have structure compared to this. If they can realize that the future of their children has been brutalized by a process of state capture, in which, as the state is becoming almost bankrupt, National Assembly governors, they're still buying brand new limousines. And black SUVs, more in Abuja than anywhere else I know in the world. And the people are starving to death. The very day that they were sharing dollars in Ghana must go bags in Abuja to win elections, 31 people stampeded to death in Port Harcourt just for a meal. There is such injustice in this country that God is looking down in a way that it will consume all of us. Fire. The kind of injustice that has. Citizens must rise to such and reclaim their country. They have allowed a group of adventurers to seize the heart of their nation. And it's crushing the people. They're bleeding. They feel powerless. But listen, the people are awake. They are ready. And Nigeria will not be the same. Amen. This is the challenge that we face. I remember during the course of the struggle back in those days, the concerned professionals had a meeting. At that time, all officialdom had blocked us from a venue to meet in Lagos. So we said we were going to meet in a church, St. Peter's, Ajele. We decided to find ways to move to mid-Lagos. As we gathered together near the Shell building, Freeman House, to walk to the hall in St. Peter's, a police officer, I wish I could remember his name, regular uniform police officer, ran up to us and said, please, 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 my brothers, we are with you. We know what you are doing. We know it is right. We know it is just thing. But they have brought a detachment from far, far, far away. I knew, because, and I can say that publicly here, somebody from the American embassy called me that morning and said, you guys be careful, because a detachment from Sokoto has come to deal with you guys specifically, the police. And so this Lagos, I don't know what his rank was, that came to us, said, please, 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 we don't want anything to happen to you, just go away. He was still talking to us, when one of us, I think it was today, Iwole, I think, brought out his Not 9 Not, as we used to call it, the cell phone. As he just brought it up, he said, who they make phone? They just rushed on us. And everybody was running in all kinds of directions. The Nigerian people must stop allowing themselves to be divided by these characters. You bring from Sokoto to crush Lagos. You bring from Lagos to crush Bayelsa. This divide and rule has to stop. We are one people. We share a common humanity. And we must work together. We lift our people from this terrible oppression by a class that does not know that it is. Sometimes we forget how much we have to lose. I always tell a story of one day in 1990, or 1 week in 1990. I was going to London that day. I was traveling on the same flight with Chief for the late Oba Oladipo Olashore and all of that. Just as I was leaving for the airport, I got a call. It was Chief Abiola. He said he wanted to see me. I said I was on my way to London. He said, no problem. And he was actually coming to London. I said, okay. I gave him the phone number for my family, because at that time I had been posted to the UK and just came back to Nigeria. I was on cross-posting, giving the number in my place in the UK. And then when I got to London, he called and said he was going to the G40 meeting in Caracas, in Venezuela. And that on his way back tomorrow, that he will call me. I said, okay. Sure, as he had said, on his way back the next day, he called me from his car and said, could we see? He was going home. And I said, that I was going to the church. My daughter, who had just been born, was being baptized. I said, but I am going to Paris this night. Where is this baptism? I said, somewhere in Bayswater. I think the name of the church in Bayswater. I said, okay. Maybe when he comes back from Paris, he will call me and say, I went to the church. I got up to read the lesson, and that was Chief Abiola sitting in the church. Inside the church. And after this thing, he said, you know, I went to Baptist school, this is my first baptism. This is the first time. He said, okay, he's still going to France. He will call me on his way back. He left again for Paris, came back the following morning, and called. What I'm trying to tell you is that in a space of 6, when he came back from Paris, I went to see him. He left. and flew. He said he had to go to see Jerry Rawlings in Ghana. And then from there, he will go to Abuja to brief Babangida on the G15 meeting. In 1 week, this man had been in like 6-7 countries. And he was not looking like he was approaching tiredness. So the work ethic that he had, let us learn it. The patriotism that he had, let us learn it. The commitment to service of others that he had, let us learn it. Because he was a beacon for our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Okindinashi Utomi. Very thought-provoking intervention.